Hello and welcome to the Tavern Chat podcast. I am Eric Tenkar. With me is Bad Mike, best known for North Texas RPG Con. Mike, welcome.
Glad to be here again for our now what's becoming a regular weekly delve into gaming issues.
Yes, so as we just discussed in the part of the episode that I'll probably tag on to the end as we're having technical difficulties, we have decided to spin this off as its own independent podcast with special guests as we can get them. And we do have a special guest who wants to join us. So
and as I said before, this is my man crush. So I am 100% on board with this special guest. We can get him on here. And as Eric said before, the part that we don't have anymore, this guest contacted us. We didn't have to come running after him. He wanted to be on our show that's not really a show. So now we have to have a show. We got to have a show because people want to be on this show, which is not really a show.
So now it will be a show. So I'll set Talking Crit up so we can have the Talking Crit podcast. Now, on Talking Crit,
when do we start making lots of money? By the way, is that like a couple weeks or
no? We have to declare how much in debt we are, and that we need to raise. No.
Yeah. Oh well. Let's do it for the love of the game. All right. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I guess so. I never got into this to make money.
Well, you know what they say about gaming. You know, if you want to make a couple $1,000s, start out with about $10,000. That is absolutely true.
I mean, I will say the great thing about the hobby for me is so long as I control some of my spending, what I make on the hobby probably covers what I spend on the hobby. So it's like a break-even deal. So in a way, that's being ahead of the game.
We're lucky. We've been in this a long time. We got to the point where I don't need a lot of stuff. I like to buy new OSR releases, but we're very lucky in that regard. I was talking to a guy a few years ago in North Texas, and he just got into old school D&D. He was looking at what he'd have to collect if he really wanted to be considered a collector. He was just like, "Oh my god!" Like, I know that this is what I did like 1990. When the internet started, I went and bought all the stuff I wanted. I can't even imagine hobby 30 years later and saying, "Okay, I want to get all the first edition releases and this." It's a lot tougher. So yes, it's cool to be able to have all the stuff you need already. So we don't have to spend a lot of money. I don't buy a lot of new things unless it's just something that, just knocks me out. I guess Kickstarter is probably the one thing where it still gets me. I can still get hooked on a Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, Kickstarter is.
In fact, I'm gonna plug something. Oh, I don't know. We have a video. I just got Ben Burns' Time for Sacrifice Call of Cthulhu hardcover. I'm gonna look into. Yeah, I'm gonna read that tonight. That's one of the. I always back Ben Burns stuff. It's really good. I'm gonna read that Call of Cthulhu book tonight.
That's right.
Yes, we can be bribed. We can be bribed if you send us a bribe.
Well, but we're never going to bribe. We actually back that.
That's right. We paid for it. That didn't work out.
I have mine too, and I just picked up from Goodman Games the third and fourth in the series of the classic reprints, and then realized after they showed up Monday that Noble Knight Games has at least one of them on sale for $39 as opposed to $50 like I paid, but whatever. Oh. Yeah. Noble Knight, by the way, has a sale going on. Apparently Lost Lands is one of their things that they're pimping right now. It's one of their featured sale items. So yes, if you didn't back the Kickstarter, the Lost Lands hard book is there too. But the reason why I went to Noble Knight is because I was talking with somebody earlier today who was like, I don't know what's going on with Raggy, whether he's going to pull it out or not. But if he doesn't pull it out and I order from him, do I get what I ordered? I think I'm just going to go to Noble Knight and spend my money there. So I was surprised at how some of the older stuff is really expensive at Noble Knight for Raggy.
Oh, the old Lamentation stuff? Oh, hell yeah. It's Raggy. So we're gonna cover this tonight because that's kind of the news of the week is the Lamentations stuff. There's also still a lot of blowback from terrible, awful press release that some intern at Wizards of the Coast threw out 10 minutes after everybody left the office back on July 3rd or 2nd, and then they had to come. They finally came out and apologized next week, like, "Oh, we stepped in it. We're sorry." But then they made it worse by doubling down, kind of. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too, I think. There's been a lot of blowback for that from that. And those are the two main things I was interested in.
Well,
I don't know what you had.
Oh, no, that was definitely. But those are things that I've talked about and posted about on the blog. And here we're gonna start with, I guess you could say, the end of the Raggy stuff, or at least I don't want to call it the punchline. But if you're listening to this podcast, you might be listening on YouTube. These episodes also get shared out on YouTube. It's a great way to listen to them. And somebody put up a comment yesterday. All four of the new books have sold over 200 copies each in the last 2 days, which is 200 times 253 euros, which is 50,600 euros. So I look forward to your follow-up video congratulating James Edward Braggy IV on his success at saving Lamentations of the Flame Princess. So,
at least for this,
right?
So
the
for the current,
for the current loan,
he saved it
for the first loan that's due. See, Raggy came out, I guess, over the weekend and said, "Hey, we're in dire straits. I've got about 55,000 in U.S. currency coming due to the Finnish government in about a month, and a little bit over 100,000 coming due overall. And if you like this stuff, buy it. If you don't, basically tell me to go screw." But
and now let's walk back just a teensy bit. James, and by the way, I like James a lot. I don't have any problem with James. He's a fun dude. I've never met him in person, but I've talked to him quite a bit on the internet. He got caught up in the Zach Smith portfolio last year. He was collateral damage because Zach was the highest selling games for Lamentations. His Red and Pleasant Land, Blue Medusa, they won awards, and they also got a lot of attention.
Blue Medusa, though, wasn't printed by James.
That's right. I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm Red and Pleasant Land. Bornheim was.
Right, and there's another one there.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. I know.
But he's a big money maker for Lamentations, and so when the blowback from the accusations against Zach came, James is in a very bad position in terms of what to do with the material. He ended up pulling everything to be published by Zach that year, which would have made him a lot of money. Zach's stuff sells really well. I mean, much of a gentle, kind, wonderful human being Zach is, and can attest to that. He's a talented dude. He's a talented dude. Yeah. He's. I guess we could say he's an asshole, right? We could say that. I mean, I don't think would Zach even disagree with that? Yeah, I don't think he'd disagree with that.
No. I would actually say that Zach is toxic. However, I believe that his works stand on their own. And Red and Pleasant Land, despite the fact that I would personally consider Zach Smith to be somebody I wouldn't piss on if they were on fire, I think Red and Pleasant Land is one of the top 5 OSR releases of all time. And I don't say that lightly. Okay.
One of 3 Castles Award.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't like the man, but, and I think Bornheim was phoned in. I don't like it. So it's not like I'm like a loyal Zach Smith product follower. I'm not. But
you're accused by somebody of being a loyal Zach Smith follower recently, which was hilarious.
I'm a defender. I'm a defender of defender and enabler of Zach Smith. So the person who said that can go fuck themselves. Okay. sit and
They
rotate.
also might need to get the Wayback Machine and see how your and Zach's relationship's gone over the years. It's not been a happy, friendly one. So that's really stupid to say that without. That just shows they don't have any clue what's actually going on. If to say something like that,
Right. I mean, listen, I always judge creative work separately from the creator. Whether I like the creator and they put out shit, I probably don't talk about it. And that's that's the one benefit of being, I guess, on my good friend list. If I like you and you put out something I think is subpar, I'll probably just ignore it. But if I don't like you and I think you put out something that's awesome, I'll talk about it. I'll pimp it because the community, the gaming community, needs good material. Red and Pleasant Land is amazingly good fucking material.
The news is really good too. I do not like. I'll go on record saying I don't like Zach's artwork at all. I just don't dig it. It's not my style. But yeah, Pleasant Land's very good. I thought Blue Medusa was really well written. Also, he got D-person cancel cultured, Me Too'd. So he was out the door. James was pretty much forced to cancel. Yeah, and the important thing is not just cancel new releases. He wasn't reprinting Red and Pleasant Land of Vornheim, correct? So that there's two more money
right.
spigots he had to shut off. So that started off bad last year. That
right. In 2019, James only put out one major release. He had to cancel. I think he had one or two books from Zach coming out, plus the reprint of Red and Pleasant Land. He got his loans based upon projections of sales from having Zach Smith in the stable, if you want to call it that. So his personal salary, which was, I guess, in 2018, after paying everybody and paying the company, he made like 50,000 euros. In 2019, he didn't even clear 5,000.
So he's having a tough year, 2019. But things are gonna turn around, right? 2020 rolls around. Oh dear. We have COVID, which cancels all conventions for the year. And if you know James, he does some of the biggest conventions in the world. He does Spiel and Essen. I mean, does all the European stuff because he's over in Finland.
And Gen Con. We always have
Gen Con
releases.
And that was a very. I think he said on his blog, he probably makes about 25% of his money every year at conventions, and I think that's probably true because he does a lot. I'm sure he does a lot of walk up business. People that see the stuff like, hey, I've heard of Lamentations. Oh, here it is. I'm gonna buy a couple of these, see if it's any good.
Right.
So conventions were all canceled, which is very bad. And then just the general problem with COVID. Affecting pretty much nearly everything in our lives here and around the world. I know some companies. I know Frogger Games. We've done very well since the COVID crisis because a lot of people were putting out material that people want to read and that people like to read. I don't know what releases James had or what he had planned. I think this whole the whole COVID thing just put a huge dent in that. And when you have that, plus you have no conventions, that's where it led to James basically appealing to his audience and saying, "Look, I gotta off these. These loans are due. When was it? Into summer or end of the month?"
He said he just over a month. So yeah, I guess we're looking at the last half of August for the first part of the loans due, which I believe was 50,000 euros, and then the full loan amount was going to be like 90,000 euros. That's huge. Now,
that's pretty.
And in addition to that hole, you've got the hole from the ref book that funded back in 2013. That is
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's 7 years. That's 7 years in now.
Yeah, and that's $33,000. Which James said back in, February, that people were requesting refunds and there was no money to give refunds. And the book was still having costs incurred. Now, if there's no money to give refunds, it means that that money's been spent, whether it's on cost of the book or whatnot. It's so even after James pays out these loans. Now, supposedly, apparently, James has raised enough money to pay back the loan that was the I guess the guillotine over his neck, the immediate threat. He's got the money to pay that back. But he's apparently also late now on paying his creators, his freelancers.
Because if you know the structure, which well, not everybody knows the structure, the Lamentations, James doesn't own most of the material. He pays out residuals. What's the word I'm looking for? Royalties. He pays out royalties for items sold, and I believe authors retain the stuff, right? James is just basically kind of the middleman here.
I'm not sure. I'd have to check some of the books I have in my collection.
And we probably should talk to some of the people. I mean, I know, I think that's how it goes. I think basically he pays out royalties. If you know, James has an interesting business model. He only prints X amount. And if you open your Lamentations item, the first page will say this is 300 copy printing, 500 copy printing, 800 copy printing, whatever, which has led to quite a bit of collectability for some of the stuff because there's only that many copies out there, right? There's only 800 copies of this or 300 copies of that.
Right, unless he reprints it or puts out a new edition, which he's done with some of his earlier work. Now, if there's the comment that I see, and this is my own personal belief, especially stuff that's written by James. His earlier writings were actually very good, very usable. They were maybe a little weird, but they were good. And his later stuff that he's written, not saying what he published, but stuff that James himself has written has been unusable in any campaign. Because the pure quality folks.
Some of the early stuff, like Death Frost Doom's very good. Grinding Gear. Did he write Hammer of the Gods? I think he did.
I think he did. Tower of the Stargazer.
Yeah. Oh, the Tower of the Stargazer is really good. I enjoy that. Yes, he kind of drifted to this. Yeah, I'm going to put out the adventure that nobody's ever going to play, or nobody believes I'm going to do this, and culminated in an adventure where the first page of the book he tells you don't if your characters in this adventure, they're all going to die. So the best thing they could do is to look at the adventure hook for this adventure and turn away and go home.
That was the monolith at the end of time.
Yes, or is known as the turd cover. It's a giant turd cover.
Yeah.
That was so. He has his later stuff is kind of along the lines of he's kind of wagging his, doing one of these on a raspberry at his audience, so to speak. Like I'm going to do something so against expectations that you're not even going to believe, that you don't even want to go on this adventure. As a matter of fact, don't go on this adventure. The best thing to do is just go home, which is silly because that's not a campaign adventure at that point. It's a one-shot convention that you might throw out there just for laughs, but you're not going to do it. So yeah, his stuff has gotten less and less usable in a campaign context or even in a one-shot context.
Right.
And I just think, I don't know if he's bored or that's just where he's naturally gravitated to, but his early stuff was really, really good and very interesting and kind of and if you don't know much about Lamentations, it's really kind of a horror SCRPG. It's got more horror aspects and not necessarily the gore horror. We're talking like psychological horror. I mean, just some really disturbing images in some of the books. So he's kind of got the reputation. He's the guy that'll publish crazy stuff, You got a adventure with cannibals, boom. James is your man. Or if you got dead babies coming to life and eating people, that sounds like a Lamentations adventure. And what was the adventure where? Which actually I kind of like. It's the adventure where the bunch of people get charmed by this alien and they have to have sex with it, and it's weird. And that's actually not a bad adventure. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, long story short, so we're talking around it. James put out an appeal a few days ago to his fans and said, "Look, I need this much money, otherwise we're going to shut our doors." And then what happened, Eric?
Apparently, they've raised the €50,000 to pay back that loan. Now, That's 200. Somebody, like I pointed out before, 200 customers paying whatever the amount was, 253 euros a piece, which leads me to an article I read on N-World this week. And listen, truth in advertising, I used to be a huge fan of N-World, even in the early Morris days. N-World has gotten a bit more toxic and political in recent years. However, very good article on how to make a living in the RPG industry. And I say it not that it's going to happen to the vast majority of people, but one part of the article was what they recalled as the 1,000 fan theory. I first saw TFT and I'm like, the fantasy trip? That's going to make you a living? I'm like, I didn't think so. But TFT, the 1,000 fan theory means if you have 1,000 loyal fans and you can get them to spend $100 a year on you, on being a loyal fan of Lamentations of the Flame Princess, James Raggy, that's $100,000 coming in. That's not what you net. That's obviously going to have, costs, expenses taken out, but that's giving you the possibility of making an income off this. And I thought, well, James certainly has a loyal amount of fans. I don't know if he has a loyal enough group of fans that they're going to raise like 50,000 euros in the course of the month. But apparently he raised it in less than a week. So
crazy.
Now imagine how much he would have raised if Zach was not unpersoned,
Or if he'd started a month ago. I don't understand why he waited to the last minute to do this unless he just. I know, maybe he just, I don't know. I know people that have had to declare bankruptcy, and at a certain point for bankruptcy, you just get to the point where you're just grasping at straws. Like, okay, well, if this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens, I won't have to declare bankruptcy. Sometimes the best thing to do is just declare bankruptcy, and maybe James was doing something like that. Maybe he was like, well, if this turns out right, this turns out right, I won't have to beg for money from my fans. And
right. And it
didn't happen. I think it didn't happen. Yeah, probably.
So then, well, I mean, listen, am I happy for James? Sure as shit. Do I think that James has a bad business model? If you've got to beg from your fans to save your ass, you don't have a good business model. There's a problem with it. And hopefully now that the Zach Smith issue is in the back, maybe he's adjusted his I don't know, he's stable.
Some people might what they would say is why doesn't just do a Kickstarter or Indiegogo? And actually, for a small company that's been as successful as James has, he has not had a good record with Kickstarters and Indiegogos, and that's unfortunately, which is odd because you see a lot of smaller publishers, that do. My buddy Lloyd Metcalf. I mean, there's a lot of guys like that. They do really well with doing Kickstarter and Indiegogos, small publications. But James has just not had any good luck. He had the ref book. Was that Indiegogo or Kickstarter? That was Kickstarter, right?
No, that was Indiegogo. Yeah. No, James
did, after 7 years. Yeah,
James did 12 consecutive Kickstarters. With the idea that each one, if you get this bonus, if 2 fund, and if 3 fund this bonus, and the reality, and as I explained it to James when he pitched the idea in my direction, that's what we plan on doing, is that you cannibalize yourself by running so many at the same time.
Right, and that was not. That didn't work out very well. I think only 2 levels of that ever funded. One was Brood Mother Sky Fortress. There's only 2. Brood Mother Sky Fortress, and then there was another one that also ended up.
Going on with the bad luck of James, and that one, I think it was Sky Fortress. The original writer died.
Yes, that's right. All about that.
But the ref book was crowdfunded in fall of 2013. James gave himself just over 5 years to put it in print, I think January 2019. And he's like, why am I putting this date on? Because it's a joke, because we all know it's not going to take that long. But I figured I'd make an inside joke about people always wanting due dates. And here we are, middle of 2020. And yeah, it's not done. I don't even know really where it is. He wound up doing it as a series of interviews.
Yeah.
Listen, the original ref book, I believe you can download it on drive-through. It's free in PDF. Grab it. It is, if not one of the top 5, then one of the top 10 OSR releases of all time. Not saying that the lamentation rules themselves aren't good. They are, but the ref book is fucking awesome, and it's applicable to any
It's just really good.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff. It's because it's some of the earlier stuff he did. I mean, this is earlier because it was a long time ago. It's been a long time. Yeah, that's one of the dangers, and people who follow Kickstarters, Indiegogos, there's usually a critical mass reached at a certain point when you kind of know it isn't going to come out. And one time I've ever been surprised is Memorial Tomb.
Yes,
it shocked me but that had a white knight, which was Troll Lord Games.
Here's the thing: the Kickstarters that you thought were going to die and didn't survive because of not just the white knight. They survived because all the funds weren't spent. Okay,
right. And then, which is very important. Very
right.
important.
So when it came to Ernie and Benoit, they had a business account. The money was in the business account, and it was sitting there. And I'd seen Ernie had showed me the actual bank statement at my first Gary Con to show me that the money was still there. Yes, it was taking time, but the money wasn't spent. When it came to Dwimmermount, some of the money was still around, at least enough to put in print. They, had to eat the man hours going in, but there was still enough money to put it in print. In this case, Troll Lord Games is, I'm sure, eating a lot of man hours, but the bulk of the monies are still there. Far West, listen, when somebody tells
and then you have to understand how rare that is. That is like this is so rare. I mean, it's like a 70-degree day in Texas in July, which we haven't had.
Yeah,
and we won't. But I mean, it's just people take, because the whole point is they take the money they got for the Kickstarter and they spend the money. They spend the money on making Kickstarter better. It's extremely rare to have people actually sit on a large amount of money for as long as Ernie and Benoit did, which it just doesn't happen. So what usually happens is the funds get cannibalized over the months and then the years and then the multiple years. And at the point when there's no money left, people like Gareth Skark are like, well, I don't have to put this out. I mean, there's no money left, and
there's nothing in it for me.
I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, and I hate to say, and I don't know. I'm sure a lot of that is what's going on with City State and the Invincible Overlord. It is now simply a money sink because the monies have been spent. James was being asked for refunds earlier this year, and he said in the update, there's no money to give out refunds, which means there was no money. There was no separate accounting of the Indiegogo monies. That money was spent. It was over and done. So
it's just where it's that Memorial Tomb is a black swan event because it just doesn't happen. Something sits that long without being fulfilled, and also like, hey, it came out. I have my PDF copy. I mean, it's shocking because we still have to see about a hard copy, which is supposed to come out also. But it's absolutely shocking that happens because if you see these things usually follow a pattern. The pattern is gets late, then it misses a deadline, then there's excuses, then people in the family die, then pets start dying, then there's illnesses, there's other problems. It just goes on and on. And then after about 4 or 5 years, you come to the realization, no matter how much of a hardcore believer you are, there's just no more money left for this project.
Right.
The guy's yanking my chain at this point, but they're with their twice yearly updates, just enough updates to keep Kickstarter off their ass. You know at that point it's not going to happen. So, I guess probably about 2 or 3 years ago, started thinking the refs book's not going to happen, which is hard to believe because at the time James was still doing very successful, doing really well, but for whatever reason he just lost interest in it. There's something happened with that, and it just wasn't going to come out. You figured this has just been way too long for a book that was supposedly it was already written, right? I mean that's. It's an updating of the ref book. I mean, it's not all new material.
I guess it is going to be all new material, and also it expanded. Like there was a monster. Like there were one of the hooks of Lamentations was there are no monsters. Every creature is unique.
Right. Nothing's from the monster manual. Yeah, it's always something unique, or monsters are really you, or they're humans.
Right.
So
there are monsters being created for this, not by James. I think Raphael Chandler was doing the monsters, and now that's going to be a separate book. So in theory, if you backed for the ref book, the £30 or I guess €30 that you backed for is going to get you a book worth like €100, but it's not going to happen. I don't think. I could be wrong. James proves me wrong right now. So who the hell knows?
Because this is also another Black Swan event. This kind of thing doesn't usually happen. Appeal to your fans and get enough money to save your company in 3 days. That's pretty shocking too. And I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought he would probably he'd probably get some money. I figured he'd get people would pledge to buy some stuff and he'd do all right. But I kept thinking, well, it's still not going to work. He's still going to end up having to, basically declare bankruptcy. I figured this is heading for bankruptcy is where it was headed. But nope, he got his fans to back him and he got the money. And the first step is out of the way. Now he's just got to go ahead past that and say, okay, I did that. I got more loans due later on in the year. What am I going to do with that?
Because James has had a couple of mistakes. He had the picture with Jordan Peterson taken out of convention, which gave
his fans hated that and drove him crazy.
Huge backlash. And then when his public relations person was dealing with a medical emergency, brought in, and now I can only think of one reason why this person would have been brought in to do public relations for James is on the recommendations of Zach Smith, because the individual in question was a good friend of Zach's before Zach imploded, and that was Stacy Del Forno. And one of the first things Stacy did was declare that Lamentations of the Flame Princess was not OSR. That was her stand on doing public relations for one of the biggest OSR rule sets. It's not OSR. So James has survived stuff like that. He survived Zach, and now he survived.
He not only that. Remember, he had a FAPO last year when he put out "This is not written by Zach Smith." Remember the furor about that?
Oh yeah,
because he thought he was gonna tweak his nose at the people who
one bookshelf.
I wouldn't say James actually he didn't defend Zach any of this, but he knew his bread and butter, right? He's not gonna come and absolutely attack Zach either. I mean, he's like a lot of us. He just doesn't know. It's a he said, she said.
Did you ever read the original? Zach did not write this.
Oh, I've never read it. I don't know what it's about. I don't have it.
I only bought it to read his. I don't know, diatribe.
No, I saw that. I saw his 2-page.
Which was a defense
diatribe
of Zach, but more of a defense of Zach's work, not necessarily the man, but a defense of Zach's work, which I defend Zach's work. But
the problem is that there's a certain crowd that you're basically depersoned. You are persona non grata, and not just everything. I mean, you can't say that anything they ever did was good. You've got to throw everything they've ever done under the bus. That there's absolutely no nuance to these people. You're either a good guy or you're a bad guy, and you're either fully good, wear a white hat, or you're fully bad and wear a black hat. There's no grays. And so yes, once Zach was taken to Me Too'd, was it. Nothing he ever did could ever be praised or said it's good. I mean, if you look now, people still just absolutely just attack the guy online, just go on and on and I don't know if you've seen this, but the point where Zach has won lawsuits because it turns out that there is one bonus to living in the United States of America is that we have something called free speech. And it's really kind of shocking all the nations that don't have free speech, which includes New Zealand and Canada and I believe Australia. And so if you say Zach Smith is a rapist and a piece of garbage, guess what? You can get sued if you say that in New Zealand or Canada. Whereas in the United States, they're just like, okay, yeah, it's free speech. See you later. So Zach has actually won lawsuits over the past year or so against YouTubers and streamers who
people had to come out and actually make public apologies.
Yep. Very humiliating public apologies, because I'm sure Zach wrote that gleefully. Public apologies to have read. But anyway, but the point of all that rambling on my part is that he wrote this kind of a tongue-in-cheek, funny, trying to be fun. I think he was trying to be funny. It fell flat. Nobody thought it was funny. Nobody thought it was amusing. He had round 2 of people throwing bricks at James, and it just, he just had a bad couple of years. This is not gone very well for him since early 2019. It's just gotten worse and worse, and nothing he's done has seemed to have helped him out.
Even like one of his layout people made a public break from him. Oh God, I think that was after the Peterson photo. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, they had a big fight over that. He had to kind of semi-apologize for liking Jordan Peterson, which honestly, I don't care. I mean, you can like who you like as long as it's not Hitler or Mussolini or Mao Zedong. As long as you have a picture of Stalin on your wall, I'm whatever. I don't know. But yeah, for a lot of people, certain personalities are triggers, and I guess Jordan Peterson's a trigger for a lot of people. And that was he lost some fans and lost some people that worked for him over that Jordan Peterson picture. So it's interesting to see where this is going to go. This is it's been a really interesting week for James. I wish I could talk to him. I'd love to. Sometimes you see these people and you really want to talk to them, and you think, well, I'm kind of their friend. I'd like to talk to them, but you realize so many people. They had with me and Luke Gygax a couple of weeks ago when he was having some issues with with his issues. He was having his issues. Yeah. Really wanted to contact him and say, hey man, hang in there, I know this, that, but I'm thinking, probably everybody's doing that. I don't want to bother the guy. He's just so busy. And I was really happy because he does a live broadcast every couple weeks or so. So I actually got to talk to him last week. He did a live broadcast, and I talked. I told him that. I said, hey, I really wanted to contact you, but I couldn't. And he felt bad because he was going to contact Doug and I before North Texas last month, and he absolutely forgot about it, which he's a celebrity. Yeah. He's a busy man. I'm like, don't worry about it. But he felt really horrible. He was going to do some stuff for us, and he just totally forgot about the con. I mean, I forgive him because a lot of people didn't even know we still had the con, so it's not a terrible thing. But anyway, I did get to talk to him finally. But he was just kind of the same way. I feel like I'd like to say, hey man, congratulations. I'm glad this happened. What the hell were you thinking that when this money rolled in? So I don't know. Maybe in the next week or so, things will calm down. I can send him an email and see if I can get a statement from him or something where he can tell us. I feel I'm glad for the guy. He's, like I said, he's had a horrible last 2 years.
Yeah,
worse than
listen, I can certainly say that 2020 can suck my ass. It has not been a good year for me personally.
2020 bent you over and kind of bones you a little bit. Yeah.
I didn't get the pleasure of a reach around either. But
no, it was just a complete boning. There was nothing good about that.
No. Well, I guess there were. In the end, I've healthily lost 20 pounds. Over 20, 25 pounds over my regular weight. So
the Tenkar pee it out diet worked great. You look good, by the way. You look. I think you look great. You really look like you look great.
I'm down to like 212 pounds. At least I've weighed since the mid 90s. So I was like, holy shit. But
that's bad.
Hopefully, here's the thing. Okay. To be honest, if James is thankfully out of the immediate reach of the guillotine, hopefully it doesn't slow down and the sales continue. That James can do well over the next couple of weeks and get himself out of debt and get himself back into a good spot to be able to produce. Because let's be honest, if your profitability, if the money in your pocket was less than $5,000 last year, you can't afford another one this year. You know?
No. And to make it even tougher with the economic situation of the world, you've got to be a little imaginative nowadays. I know Frog God, we've had to pull out all the stops. We've done a lot of stuff. We've had twice monthly Indiegogos. We pushed back all our Kickstarters until really next year or the end of this year. I mean, we're not doing any big. We did a couple of Kickstarters that weren't big Kickstarters. We're doing the Alchemy book right now, which give it a look. See, that's my plug for today. The Alchemy book. It's going to be for 5th edition, but actually, you can for any edition. So end of plug there. But yeah, we've had to do a lot.
You're getting a good selling point on the book too. Who's involved in the writing of it?
The guy who wrote it's this guy right here. Downtime and Demences, Mr. Courtney Campbell.
Yes.
Actually, there's a funny story behind that. He actually wrote it several years ago, and we were going to do a Kickstarter, and there were a series of mix-ups that kind of got filed away, and then one day, Courtney happened to ask us, like, hey, whatever happened to that manuscript I gave you to publish? And we're like, what manuscript? Well, the project manager had left the company in the meantime. I won't throw him under the bus. And had forgot to tell us this thing was finished. And so we found the manuscript, and we did some touch-ups. We had some stuff. I think Michael Potter might have had some stuff he added. A few people added some things in there. But yeah, it's if you like Courtney Campbell's stuff, which is really good, definitely give it a look-see. A Book of Alchemy on Kickstarter. It's almost really system neutral, even though it's for 5e. It's going to be pretty much a system neutral book. I didn't mean to plug. I wasn't really plugging there. I was just using an example of a company that has to. There's things you have to be more innovative about. This is a brave new world we're in, man. This has changed. This COVID's changed everything. There's no conventions anymore. A lot of companies, especially smaller companies, are really hurt by this because you've been to conventions, Eric. A lot of these guys rely on walk-up sales, and I know James did too, because I read James's blog, and after every convention he talks about how many people walked up and just grabbed a ton of books, and just especially the last couple of days, and he always comes home with big old wad of money in his pocket. Well, there's no conventions this year. You don't have all those great walk-up cash sales that you would normally have. It's tough. It's really, really tough. It's you got to find a new business model in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, it is. And I mean, we're talking about Courtney. Courtney is one of the people who can make a living off of writing RPG material, but he lives a very inexpensive, frugal life to make that doable. So a project like this with Frog Guy Games, that's going to help him out immensely. And I'm glad that Courtney has found success with his own Kickstarters, because he is, his imagination, his writing, top notch. He's inspirational for the rest of us. So
stuff's good. This Downtime is Demences. I'm running a campaign right now. I can't tell you how many times I've flipped through here and rolled on some of these charts. And this, his stuff's just really good. Definitely check out Courtney's stuff. It's very, very well written and very useful. That's the whole thing. Is a lot of times you buy these books and you never use them. Like, that looks pretty on my bookcase, but then you never use the book. Courtney's stuff you definitely use.
Yes. When that's either setting up your adventure or in the middle of it, you can pull out something and it gives you ideas. I'm one of those DMs that likes to run an improv, so inspirational material that I can use at the table.
His stuff's perfect. His stuff is perfect for that.
Yep. No, he's top notch. So our other topic for tonight was going to be the going-ons at Wizards of the Coast.
For this pretty quick here. It's just spent really pretty much all last show talking about the absolutely horrific relations disaster that was the statement that came out last week. Which basically, everybody that ever played D&D for the last 20 years, plus the creators under the bus, as being racist, and then they walked it back a little bit, but unfortunately, language was not what I think some people wanted, and it seemed to say don't really take it back what we said. We're just trying to say it a little nicer this time.
Yes.
So they really didn't. Here's the problem: you can't make everybody happy in life, politics, or even in games. And so they basically pissed off the older gamer Grognard, who thinks that they were called a racist, whether they were or not. I mean, it came out like that way. All the older creators are basically said, look, even though you were inadvertently racist, you guys are all racist. You know that, right? I mean, you guys know you're racist. So he basically said that, which pisses off all the old school gamers that came out and said, we're not going to buy WotC anymore. Which a lot of them already don't buy WotC. I mean, I already don't purchase any WotC stuff. It is. The problem was it didn't make any of the progressive NDers happy either because it didn't go too far, didn't go far enough, or just for the fact that it really people are smarter than you think they are. And last week we talked about performative activism, where somebody says, "Oh my gosh, my shoe factory, Nike, we're paying 10 cents a day to these guys. That's awful. I'm going to donate $100,000 to kids in the ghetto, and that'll make that better, right?" So in other words, they're really not doing anything because they make billions of dollars. $100,000 to them is like a nickel to you and me. They're really not making anything better, but they can pat themselves on the back and sleep better at night because they did something. This is kind of a lot of the more progressive D&Ders are seeing this for what it is. It's nothing. It's just saying bare minimum, which is, hey, we're sorry that our products might have been racist and we'll do better in the future. They're not actually doing anything. And made it sound like, so they said that, well, we're going to have consultants come in, which that's always danger, big red light, wah, 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 consultants that's not good. As my radio friend said, and I will repeat because it's one of the best quotes ever, consultants are like pigeons. They come in, they shit all over everything, and they fly off. They fly in, they shit all over everything, they fly off. They're not there to help your company. They're to get a paycheck. And so, and then somebody pointed out, which I thought was funny, how the last time they got consultants from outside work out? That worked out with both Zach Smith and RPG Pundit getting kudos in the 5th edition rulebook, which they have removed those now. They've rewritten history, removed their thank you very muches. So this has a chance to blow up in their face, because what happens if you have a consultant come in and say, "Oh yeah, you need to take out all these Dro products. This stuff, you can't have black skinned people living underneath the earth. Every single adventure that has a Dro in it you got to take it out. You can't have those for sale anymore. Take out Menzo Baranzan, whatever has Dro, you don't want to see that anymore." What if they say that? I mean, what if that's their expert recommendation? And I think that's where you come in, Eric. I think you're probably a little more out under the collar about this than I am, because, like I said, I don't have any vested interest in WotC anymore. I really don't care. You're coming at, you can tell me what you think, but from what you've written, I'm getting the impression you think that this is going to go really bad over time.
Well, here's the thing. When it comes to the outrage mob, whether the outrage mob is on the left or on the right, doesn't make a difference. You try to give them enough to appease them, but you don't realize that by appeasing them, you think, I'm going to give you a pound of flesh. They don't want a pound of flesh, okay? You give them a pound of flesh, they want the whole arm. They're not going to just stop. They've got the taste now. And they realize, hey, we only needed a few loud voices, and all of a sudden, now every legacy release up on one bookshelf has this disclaimer. No longer at the end, by the way, at the beginning of the product description. And that didn't take much effort, right? That took one loud podcast, which or videocast, YouTube channel, to get that change. Gee, if we add a few more voices, we can get them to pull products. Or, because think about it. DMG, the original DMG has a harlot table in it, right?
Sure.
Well, and I'm not saying that's a good thing to have. I'm saying it's probably certainly not correct in this day and age. It was pointed out.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a product with that in it now. No, that's definitely something that you would not have in modern product.
No. You have, well, not even from TSR, but the old Judges Guild, City State, the Invincible Overlord, has poorhouses and drug dens throughout the map. You probably have to pull all those references off.
How about every cheesecake photo of a fighter in a chainmail bikini? That is a no now.
Oh God, yes.
And that's a lot of products. A lot of older products have that.
Yeah. So I don't think that what they've done, and also, by the way, they also say this is just an early step. It's not the last step.
Oh, that's when your warnings. That's people that are on Facebook and other social media right now. They're like going, "Everybody getting so bent out of shape." All they did was put a disclaimer in there. They have specifically stated, "This is step one. This is not. This is not over.
This is not the be-all. This isn't."
I'm with you.
They know.
Disclaimer.
Set up the anger brigade.
I don't have any problem with a disclaimer, but it's not going to stop there.
No.
They've already said it's not going to stop there.
Now, here's the funny thing. If they had put up this disclaimer a year ago, guess what? This would be a non-issue right now. Because they would have put up the disclaimer not in a response to someone, but because they themselves said, oh, wait, this might offend somebody. Let's put up a disclaimer. And then when the Angry Podcast came across it, they wouldn't be like, oh, yeah, but there's a disclaimer. So really, what are we going to say? Now, oh, well, there's a disclaimer because we complained. And that's the problem with disclaimers. When they're done in the response, they're worthless. They really are.
And that's one of the hallmarks of performative activism. It always comes in reaction to something rather than we're going to lead with this. It reminds me of last year, Minister of Canada Justin Trudeau got hammered for running around in blackface when he was younger, and it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever. But he didn't come forward with it. He was presented with photos of himself. Said, "Oh yeah, I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong." That's the problem here. Is if you wait for them to come and tell you, show you something, and then you react, you've already lost, right? I mean, you've lost because the high ground's gone. You have two choices. You can either apologize, which you really have to do, or you can double down, which is not a good idea either. If you double down, they're going to hit you twice as hard. So if you wait for something to come forward and then react to it, you're in big trouble. And that's why this is good for WotC, because not only did they wait for somebody to come forward, do you remember mobs of people in front of the WotC headquarters with signs saying, "Oh, you're a racist company"? No, this wasn't in result of any large, giant upswelling of their fans. That's always dangerous when you listen to, like you said, one or two angry voices, and you make a policy change based on those one or two angry voices. That's dangerous to do because you're right. You're giving power to a very small minority of people. I think Joe Block had some pretty heavy thoughts on some of his posts, but he said something I thought was great. Is that one of the things that WotC had apologized for was their treatment of the Vistani race in Ravenloft, which is, as you know, is based on the Roma. You know, what we used to call gypsies, politically incorrect name gypsies now, the Roma. And Joe asked a question. He said, "What's so bad about the portrayal of the Roma? I'm Roma. That's my heritage. I read the material. I didn't see anything that's that wrong with it. Who are the Roma? I want to know who is Roma and who came forward with this. Or is this just a totally unforced something they just decided that we're going to do out of the blue? Or is this something they actually got complaints about? Somebody said, hey, you know, this is really very stereotypical." And the same thing with what's going on now. Is this because of one angry voice? Do we not know the particulars? Maybe they were getting letters for years from people. I don't know. They haven't said that.
No.
I can understand if that was the case. If that was the case, that they'd be getting angry letters for years and years, or people walking up to them at the convention going, "Look, your depictions of orcs and drow are just way off, way off, and I don't like them." I don't think that's the case, though, is it? I mean, that I know of.
Well, and the whole when I when I was gaming back in the 80s and 90s, our questions about orcs were was on that nature versus nurture. The paladin's question was always, do you kill the orc babies? Are they doomed to be evil? So is it justified to kill the orc babies because you know they're going to be evil? And it's just like, we were talking questions about that. It had nothing to do with making an assumption that orcs were a stand-in for Africans. We never had that. It was nature versus nurture. And usually the paladin, who was always like, lawful stupid, always wound up just like, well, I'll kill them mercilessly,
Or the other party members would trick him to go outside the room and come back, and all the orc babies were mysteriously dead on the floor, and he's too stupid to figure out what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, they all crawled down the well. Oh,
well, I think what you're looking at here. Well, it used to be a moral or ethical question, then it somehow became a racial question, which is
right.
It's weird. I can understand the moral and ethical dilemma because it's very interesting, and we've been around long enough to hear these arguments 20 years ago. There used to be these arguments like, would a paladin kill orc babies? Is evil intrinsic? And you could have passionate arguments both ways. So it would say, well, yes, they're not a real race. This is a fantasy race, and they're evil. You'd kill them, and then people would say, no. There's always choice. Like you said, nature versus nurture. The paladin. I mean, I remember a campaign that I had a friend played in, and he had the eternal orc finds orc babies. What is he? Or your paladin finds a bunch of orc babies. Well, guess what? He took them back to the monastery and raised them all. And about when the fast forward the campaign, he had an army of loyal orc followers because he'd rescued them when they were babies. Because orcs grow up fast. Remember, their middle age is like age 16. Or by 16, they're like adults, or I can't remember what it was. Half orcs. I mean, not orcs.
Right.
But they don't live very long lives. So yeah, he rescued all these orc babies, and then later on the campaign, his paladin has a loyal orc army, and of all lawful good orcs because he's raised them to be. So I mean, there's different ways people dealt with it. It was really interesting. Once it became a issue, is this a stand-in for race? That's when things got off the rails a little bit. That's tough. Tough to deal with.
Yeah, and I personally, my personal point of view when it comes to gaming is that I've never. This is, and I'm going to step in the political realm right here. This is all that intersectionality that has gotten involved in everything from social work to religion, and it's coming to gaming, and all of a sudden it's like, well, obviously orcs are a stand-in for blacks, and goblins are a stand-in for Asians. Why? Well, because they're short. Come on. And Oriental Adventures, which for me, when I gamed, the only important thing about Oriental Adventures was, oh, look at that, non-weapon proficiencies. That's interesting. Otherwise it was just more classes to put into your game. I didn't think it was an authentic version of Asian culture. No more than I thought that Greyhawk was an authentic reflection of European culture. But
there's a quote attributed to Sigmund Freud that in recent decades people have said, well, he might not have said that, but it's a great quote. Freud related everything to sex, right? Everything was sex, and you want to, it was just, everything came back to that. And one time a student was talking to him about such and such, and like, oh, well, that guy used to smoke cigars a lot. Well, a cigar is a stand-in for the penis. So what does that mean? And Freud famously, maybe or maybe not, said, sometimes a cigar is just a good smoke. In other words, don't go looking for meaning everywhere. Sometimes it's just what it is. Sometimes orcs are just evil creatures that, they were.
You gotta kill.
Whatever their origins, they're just evil. And they don't have anything to do with people of color. Sometimes Drow is just based on a fantasy, race of creatures that live beneath the earth that were, You can look up, if you go online, you can look up the fantasy origins of Drow. It's basically an evil race of dwarves. Sometimes you don't. Everything doesn't need to. Everything doesn't always mean something else. Sometimes it just means what it means. And if you're looking too hard, you're going to find whatever you're looking for. You know what I'm saying.
Yep.
If you go looking for it, you're going to find it probably.
I think that's a pretty good way to end the podcast. That's a pretty good.
I'm sure this is going to be around for a while too, kids. I think this has just begun because in a year without conventions, there's nothing to take the stink off this. Because normally by this point we're supposed to say, hey, guess what? Gen Con next month, woo! And everybody be all excited about Gen Con. The problem of our COVID world is we don't have these distractions anymore.
No.
And so there's just nothing to do. People sit around on social media all day and bitch about things. So this is going to have some legs. This will have some legs, I have a feeling.
Definitely. Well, Mike, I guess next week we'll launch the new Talking Crit podcast.
Hopefully we'll have a special guest that is my man crush.
I will reach out to your man crush and arrange some other man crushes for us to sit down and yap with. We're not doing interviews, by the way, folks. Just so you understand.
Ooh.
No, we don't.
That's not what we do.
No, we hang out and talk crit.
It's like we had Glenn last week. We didn't do an interview with Glenn. Glenn just sat in and contributed. That's what we're going to do when we have people. We're going to talk about stuff and have their opinions. We're not going to do the Johnny Carson, like, okay, pimp your material for 5 minutes and tell us a funny story. Nope. It's going to be right into the issues. And what do you think?
Definitely.
That's what you pay for here on Talking Crit.
Yeah. Well, you don't pay for anything, but
you're not paying for anything.
If you did, that's what you're paying for.
Yes. If you did pay for it, that's what you would pay for.
Folks.
All right.
We're out of here. God bless. Be good.
Your mask.
Thanks. Yes, wear a mask. Even if it's post-COVID, wear a mask unless you're going into a bank, in which case maybe you should. Just a thought. All right. Later.
Later.